what is a list of questions, non-technical questions for mid-senior technical PM roles? So in this video, I'm going to try to answer this question. And if you're just looking for these questions, I already have them in the video description. But the reason why I'm making a video about this is because there are some topics here that I used to categorize these on, and I will add a couple of notes on these things. So if you know, for a technical question in a job interview, you should actually take your time and take, you know, I know of stories of 15 minutes to think about how to answer a question, a technical one. For these non-technical types of questions, it's a behavioral interview. So they will basically look at your past experiences to predict your future behavior on the job, performance on the job, I should say. So the more time it takes you to find an answer, needless to say, you know, the quality of your performance might be impacted by this. Now, I'm not saying you're here to hurry up and have an answer in at most 2 seconds of them finishing asking the question. But what I'm saying is that you should avoid having quiet periods of time, and this is why, you know, these lists should come in handy, because this list would hopefully give you an overall picture on the types of questions you can expect here. So this being said, let's just jump straight into these. The first one is when you took a risk in a fast-paced project. The reason why someone would ask you this is because they want to see your bias for action. The second, a metric that you designed to improve on something. So this is your ability to invent something or maybe to simplify something. Number three, a time when you disagreed with your manager but still had to deliver. So this should tell about your backbone. And oftentimes people choose the wrong type of examples here because they choose examples where their boss were wrong. So I would discourage you for going into such scenarios, except if you find that example is something that could make the difference in your interview compared to other candidates. Because the risk is that you risk sounding arrogant in a way if you proved your boss wrong here. The reason why someone would ask you this is because they also want to see about your interpersonal skills. Whereas if you give an example where your manager was right, chances are you show someone who's easy to work with and really, you know, works as expected in rather unpredictable situations and doesn't give way to pressure in these exchanges. How do you show customer obsession? Now, especially for a technical PM, these are very important types of questions, and different PMs applying for different roles, different seniority levels of roles at different companies will have different answers here. What do I mean by this? Well, for example, at Amazon, the #1 leadership principle is customer obsession. So you would want to take this like everything starts with the customer and works backwards from there. If you apply for a job at Facebook, it's not that much about the customer, or I should say it's not that much about the external customer, but rather the internal customer that you have there. More so at Google and less so at Apple. So depending on what your dream job is, you should basically tailor these stories around customers. And by the way, this could be both positively and negatively framed as well. A complex problem that you solved using data. Now, of course, you know, they would ask you this because they want to see how you analyze and how you dive deep into details. But usually when you solve a complex problem, usually it's, I mean, if you're the only one involved in solving that problem, that's perfect. Using data, that's excellent. But if there were multiple people involved there, be prepared, you know, to talk also about your interpersonal skills, because usually what happens these days is employers or interviewers got smarter in not giving you away the reason they ask you these questions from the beginning. So this question, a problem that you solve using data, could be an interesting entry point to test your interpersonal skills if that problem that you solved using data required you to cooperate with various other members in your team. So again, depending on the type of example that you choose here, they will be inclined to ask you a couple of more questions here. And it's up to you to define what's the best story to use here. It's usually the best story that makes the difference with these things. How do you make trade-offs between quality and deadlines? Now, this is a rather interesting one, and this is a question that would get asked to test how you deal with quality in general. I've seen people get away with examples talking about how they decreased quality about deadline, but that's not often. What's the best possible answer here is, you either innovated or either found some sort of trick to ideally raise the quality within that same deadline, if not less. For example, automated testing for some software product, if that makes sense. Now, the next category is about your ability to deliver. Describe a time when you went outside normal procedures to get a project done, right? So when you literally went above and beyond to get something done. You are going to miss tomorrow's deadline. How do you and your team handle this, right? So this is another very interesting question, and it's about your ability to deliver. So think about an example where, although the situation got tense, you had a successful outcome, because they're not asking you for, you are going to miss tomorrow's deadline, right? So they're not asking you necessarily for a major failure, but rather a smaller one, but they want to see how you handle that in the overall context, right? And if it's tomorrow's deadline, that's a smaller deadline. It's not the final deadline, because if it would be such a big deadline, it wouldn't be the one that you're aware of tomorrow, right? So I believe this is an interesting inflection point here. What's your biggest failure, right? So this is a proper failure story here. So here you must be prepared to talk about the proper failure. You should take ownership of it. You should quantify it in some way, and the other half of your answer should be about your learnings. Here I have a couple of pretty detailed videos on how to go about answering failure story if you're interested. And then it's a category of interpersonal type of questions. Are you easy to work with? It'll say you need a great example here. An example of a time when you successfully organized a diverse group of people to accomplish a task, right? So it'll say this is for roles that do require management skills, managerial skills. So even if you're applying for individual contributor role, chances are they will ask you these types of questions as well. Please share an experience in which you presented to a group. What was the situation? How did it go? Again, I'm talking about interpersonal skills here. So think about the time when your presentation made the difference here. Usually, as a technical person, you'd be inclined to say it's because of the content of the presentation that you made a difference, but usually that's only half of the story, right? How you present and how you engage with the room, how you read the room, how you earn their trust is also what matters in a job interview. Describe a time when you found it difficult to work with someone from a different background. Again, this is an example you must brainstorm on. What did you do when you need to motivate a group of individuals? And this, in my experience, has also showed in not that senior types of roles, and even in individual contributor roles as well. So again, your listening skills, your interpersonal skills should come out from these examples. The next category here, provide an example of a time when you were able to demonstrate excellent listening skills. What was the situation and outcome? Or tell me about the recent failure that you have, or how do you deal with ambiguity? This is on the topic of being right a lot. The theory is that great leaders, and you are supposed to be a great leader as a technical PM, are right a lot. Now, how do you go about answering these questions? You must find major events from your career and address them to exemplify your thought process on how did you find the best possible outcome of that given situation. So the first one, a time when you were able to demonstrate excellent listening skills. Try to think about something important when you really listened to what actually happened, or how a recent failure that you have. It should be a proper failure, and the interesting part they are interested about here is what you learned and how you grew from that experience. besides, it should be a proper failure. And how do you deal with ambiguity? Again, this is a pretty broad question, but they are interested in your leadership here, right? So you must think about a pretty significant example that should, the end goal is to show that you're right a lot as a leader. So this is the where you want to be. The next category, developing employees. Please share an experience in which you successfully taught someone a difficult principle of concept. How were you able to be successful? Now you see here, it's not necessarily a manager level role here that I'm talking about here, but even if you're an individual contributor, you are supposed to develop employees. Have you ever fired someone? Of course, this would be for a pure management manager level role. How do you deal with low performers? So how do you deal with low performance? It should be a journey rather than a destination. So don't just pick a very straightforward example, say it in 15 seconds and you're done. Try to go with a specific example in a star format and with ideally a performance improvement plan or whatever else that was involved there. But there must be something interesting there. So it's usually the interesting examples that will score you the most points here. And finally, the general types of questions. What's your weakness? Or give me 5 examples of how you're working to better yourself. Or why do you want to work here? Or tell me about yourself. These types of general questions are something pretty standard to prepare for pretty much any interview. And I'm not sure if I mentioned in the video, but the order that I presented this question is from the least commonly asked to the most commonly asked. So these general types of questions are the most commonly asked questions in job interviews, and that's why you would want to pay particular attention to have the best possible approach here. In preparing for the general types of questions, the best approach I know is to first think carefully what's your strength. How do you want to picture yourself in a job interview? And that should be the starting point of preparing even your weakness, if you want. I have another video on this channel on how to find your weakness using Amazon's leadership principles, and you'll see there that there are 2 topics that are very closely related. But once you know these things, you will be able to much better sell yourself in a job interview. And it goes the same with why do you want to work here. You want to know how to differentiate yourself from other candidates, because those people hear the same answers. Hey, this is a great company, I'm very excited to be here. The answer, if they hear this from so many candidates, it's a unique opportunity for you to sell yourself even better here. So that's why you would want to allocate, and actually you'd want to probably start your preparation with preparing these general types of questions to have the best possible approach to answer them until you're satisfied with these, and only then move further with the other more niche scenarios. And the best way to find out, for example, you could role play with someone, role play in the mirror, role play with a friend, or even I have a free role play service to help you find out candidates preparing for job interviews. But again, long story short, these general types of questions is something that will make a difference if you take them seriously in preparing for a job interview.